Hello and welcome to A Sense of Centerville and Washington Township, your place for stories about ordinary and extraordinary residents and places in the Centerville and Washington Township area. I'm Susan from Centerville-Washington History, and today my guest is Liz Fultz. Liz is the director of Washington-Centerville Public Library. She began her career at the library in 1996 in the reference department and held various roles before becoming the director in 2019. Liz has a Master's of Library Science degree from the University of Kentucky and a Bachelor's of Business from Morehead State University. She is a member of the Centerville Noon Optimists and resides in Washington Township with her husband and 2 children. Welcome to our program.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me.
No, it's so fun. I have never met you, and so it's fun for me to meet people in Centerville, which is one of my favorite parts to do of this program. So can you share some of the history of the libraries in this area?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Most people, I don't think, realize how far back the history of the library goes. The first library was formed in this area in actually 1810. It was the Washington Social Library Company. Members bought shares into it. It was established similarly to the first library that Benjamin Franklin formed. I forget how many members they were. They had shares in it, and it was around for about 30 years until an unscrupulous business person bought up enough shares that he could convert the library over into a bank. So
sounds so odd, doesn't it?
I know. He bought the shares so that he could use that charter for his own purposes. The bank was not successful. It didn't last for very long. But that is the very first library that was here in this area. There's a little bit of gap in service, and then in 1900, it became the Centerville Library Club. It was also a private membership organization that was around for about 30 years, and then it became the Washington Township Public Library. So it's been a public library since 1930. And I think that just shows the adaptability and the longevity of libraries. I hear people say to me, well, why do we still need libraries? When everything's on the internet. And the fact that we've been here for nearly 100 years as a public library, I think just shows the importance and the value that it has in the community.
Definitely. And while we're talking about libraries, before the 2 buildings that we have currently, there were several other buildings around Centerville.
Yes. And in fact, in those very early days, the library was just in a room in somebody's house. It started as books wrapped up that somebody would keep on their piano, and the library members could come in and get a book from that individual that was the keeper of that little collection. It moved from 1 room to 2 rooms. At one point, it was in a building that was a former blacksmith. Mm-hmm. The building's still standing.
It's still standing
on Main Street, just a little south of Franklin. In 1961 is when the first Centerville Library building was built on Virginia Avenue. So that opened in 1961.
So the one right next to Klein is the one we're talking about,
Yes,
right?
the one right on, and okay. Yep. In 1974, there was a small branch in the Washington Square Plaza where Dorothy Lane Market is now. Mm-hmm. There was a little storefront there until the Woodburn Library opened in 1980. And then the Centerville Library moved to its location now on Spring Valley. That building was built in 1995. So, yes, we've been all around town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting to hear this story. But let's talk a little bit about your story, how you came interested in the career you have.
My background is a little bit different from, I would say, most librarians.
Because, yes, you have a business degree,
right,
which is not really typical.
You see a lot of English majors that work in libraries. I, as a lot of college students, did not know what I wanted to do once I graduated, and I picked business with computer information science as a major because I felt like that would be applicable to a lot of different careers. I worked in the university library as an undergrad. I started as a shelver, and I have to say I found that incredibly boring.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because I would find it to be too.
So I asked to be relocated to a different I wanted to go work in the Alumni Association with my roommate, and the library said, no, we can't let you go, but what we can do is put you in the interlibrary loan department. So in there, I would receive requests from other libraries, people that wanted to borrow materials. I would go find those, package them up, and ship them off to the other libraries. That was way more interesting, and I had fun and enjoyed that. So I did that for 2 years as an undergrad. And then when I graduated, I still didn't really know what it was I wanted to do. And I happened to read an article that American Library Association was saying that there was going to be this wave of librarians retiring. And I thought, well, okay, I could do that. So I went and got my master's degree, and Washington-Centerville Public Library was my first job after graduate school, and I've been here ever since.
So you've been here through so many of the adjustments and transitions that have happened.
Oh, yeah. When I first started at the library, I think we had one internet computer that had dial-up. So,
I remember dial-up.
Yeah.
Things have changed a lot because I know now the library is such a huge place to do research and things like that. It's very important. Let's talk a little bit about the Woodburn Library expansion. So can you share a little bit about that process?
Sure. One thing about the Woodburn Library is that the building itself has some historic significance. It was designed by a Cincinnati architect named Woody Garber, and there aren't many of his buildings left. He did a lot of banks and that have since been demolished. So we knew going into the project that we wanted to honor that history. The sunscreen that is on the Far Hills side and the north side of the building, that is attributed to an Italian sculptor named Harry Bertoia. Bertoia did some other work with Woody Garber, so we don't believe Bertoia built it, but we do think he designed it, and his estate has acknowledged that too. So, we wanted to keep that mid-century modernist design that the building originally had. And I think the architects that we worked with, did a really nice job in keeping with the style. Libraries now, these days, are being used much differently than they were when that building first opened in 1980. Prior to the renovation, there was no programming space. So to have, a large program and people come in, there was nowhere to do that at that library. So we have that now. We've added the meeting space for small groups, 4 to 6 people. And we also have added a creativity space where people can come in. It's concrete floors and indestructible tables. So if people want to do something that's a little messier, there's room to do that too. So, the libraries are just really community gathering spaces now, so much more than just books.
Yeah, in fact, we'll go ahead and skip to that and talk about partnering with other organizations because it is, you do an amazing job at doing that. So share a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we love all of our community partners. We work a lot with Centerville-Washington Park District. Most recently, last summer, we brought in the Wall That Heals, which was the 3/4 size replica of the Vietnam Veteran Memorial Wall. And we had the idea to bring this to our community, but it was big. It was nearly 400 feet long, and we did not have room on our property to put something like that. So we approached the park district and asked them if they would be willing to let us host it in one of their parks, and it just worked out so beautifully. They actually just yesterday won an award from the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association for that exhibit. So that is one partnership that we're really, really proud of. We have a longstanding current partnership with the Washington Township Recplex. They are hosting our Creativity Commons,
which is a lovely, lovely place.
And it's become hugely popular. It's only about 700 square feet.
It's small.
Was
the babysitting room years ago.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Everybody refers to it as the babysitting room. We only have it open about 5 hours a day, but we're averaging 50 people a day coming through. So for people that aren't familiar with that, it's our little mini makerspace. We have 3D printers, a sublimation printer, which fuses the ink into the fabric, or you can print onto mugs or mouse pads. There's sewing machine, embroidery machine, a large format printer to do banners and things like that.
Which we've used.
Yeah. And so the spaces are very creative, very entrepreneurial. It's a place where people can explore their creativity, but also try something out. And there's, examples of people who founded a little business, cottage business, just from spaces like these, and creating little products that end up turning into something. So we do have plans. We are in the process of looking at our Centerville Library. As I said, it was built in 1995, and again, in the last 30 years, libraries are being used differently. So we want to move that Creativity Commons. We want to be able to expand it and offer more hours and some additional equipment. So we're going to look to move it into the Centerville Library there on Spring Valley.
And I love that you can pay for the project as you go. So if anyone's interested in that, they can check into the cost there.
Yeah, and the only cost with using it is the consumable materials that you use. Yeah, so there's no rental fee for the equipment or anything like that. So it's very reasonable.
Yes, it is. It's been great for nonprofits as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the statues and art installations, and in with that, maybe Dottie Yak.
Okay. Both of our libraries have what are kind of iconic outdoor sculptures. The Centerville Library has the stack of books. That was a contest in 1996 for the bicentennial of the first settlers.
200 years since the first settlers came to this area.
So that was a contest to honor that bicentennial. So it was installed in 1997, but the process for it began in 1996. And the artist of that is Michael Fresca, and he also has a similar sculpture outside of the Cincinnati Public Library downtown. So he's well known for these large sculptures of books. Dottie Yak, who was a longtime library trustee, and she was very fond of Woodburn Library. The Woodburn Library, she was integral in moving it from the storefront into the building that it's in, the location that it is now. She was president during that time. And so Woodburn she has kind of a soft spot for Woodburn. She didn't want Woodburn to be left without its own statue. So she purchased the Storytime statue that's there now with the boy and the girl that are back to back reading books. She she bought that statue for that building. So that was her contribution.
So she didn't commission it. She just found it?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. She
I
took
didn't
care of that
know
one
that.
herself. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Dottie had, she's had such a impact on the library and was just so integral in so much. And we're still seeing that now. In 1974, there was supposed to be a development near Mandel Drive, so across the street from the new Kettering Health building, the old Kroger. And Dottie approached those developers and convinced them that they should have a library as part of their development, because the library can bring in people that would then become customers for the businesses that were there. So she got them to sell the library a parcel of land for $1. Apparently, I don't know, I couldn't figure out the story of what happened with that development, but apparently it never came to fruition. But the library still had that land.
So that's the Centerville where the Centerville.
No, this was at the corner of Mandel and 48.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It's still a vacant lot.
Okay.
Right to this day.
Oh.
But we held on to that lot all of these years, nearly 50 years, and we sold it in 2021 for like $500,000. So
that's money that you...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that $1 investment that Dottie made for the library in 1974, we're still, we just saw the realization of that nearly 50 years later. So, it's just very, she's just very forward thinking, I would say. We still run the Dottie Yeck Good Life Award writing competition, which is for kids in grades 7th through 9. It was an endowment that she set up, and every year the winner wins $3,000. It's a huge prize, and it's kids all across Montgomery County. This year will be the 18th year for that writing contest. So that's part of her legacy. We have the Woodburn Library Arts Endowment, which circles back to your question about the art. She set up an endowment for art specifically at the Woodburn Library, which we used during the renovation and expansion to commission 4 different pieces of art throughout the building. We have the blueprint, the mobile that hangs in the front, the Snake and the Mouse, which is a mural outside of the children's room, the Library A to Z, which is a piece that's just outside of the large print area, and then the stone wall, which is in the very back of the building in the quiet area. And all of the artists that were selected for those have a connection or a tie to this community. So it was important that we had it, had some local artists featured, and that endowment money was used to bring that artwork into the library. We have a Bing Davis there, original Bing Davis. We have an original Peter Catalano. We've brought in musicians and landscaping. We've done some, shrubbery gardens and things. And so, again, this just shows Dottie's legacy and her commitment to the library.
Oh, I'm so glad you're talking about this. Is this the Dottie that was married to Bill?
Yes.
We've already talked about with the Park District.
Yeah.
They were really such a foundation in our community.
Yes, they really were. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I tried to convince my kids to do that. Dottie Yeck, Good Life.
The Good Life Award, yeah.
Never could convince them, but that's okay. But oh my goodness, what a legacy! And those little kids back to back reading. I have a picture on my fridge of my 2 children sitting right near them and doing that. So I know it's a fun thing to imagine yourself. But adding on to that, you do a wonderful job of bringing in other local artists for displays in your in that facility.
That was one thing that we were able to do with the renovation of the Woodburn Library is create some
gallery.
Some exhibit space. And I'm just amazed at how many talented artists we have in this area. The quality of the artwork that we are able to have on display is it's really stunning.
Mm-hmm. And it brings people into the library to see. I know we've gone on dates, me and my husband, to go and look at the art at the library. It's just a fun thing to do, and it's always great. And
it's almost always something new. It rotates out pretty much monthly.
Yeah. And that's wonderful. Let's talk about the library evolving with the adjusting needs of the community. We've talked about a couple of things with the commons, the community commons.
When I first started, we had one internet computer that was dial-up. We went from that into having probably 25 computers that had internet access, desktop computers that people would come in. And I can remember times when we would have people waiting to use a computer. And now, like that, the usage of that has kind of, starting to drop off. People are more interested in bringing in their own devices and using the Wi-Fi. So they're looking for more flexible seating. We see tutors all the time in the library, and people just looking for a place to work where they don't feel like they have to buy something. They can just come in and use the Wi-Fi and have a quiet place away from home to do what they need to do without, feeling like, well, there has to be some kind of transaction involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Going to that, my daughter, who just graduated recently, she would often go to the library because sometimes at your home you're distracted by the snacks, or you're distracted by the TV, or you're
throwing a load of laundry.
But coming to the library, it puts you in that workspace that you're like, I'm going to work now.
And it makes it a little easier to focus sometimes.
Right. And then the other thing that is wonderful about going to the library is the use of all the different databases that you can use when you have a library card and you're at the library.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you how many databases, and people think, well, I can just Google it and get an answer, but the databases are going to bring you like valid information and reliable sources. You might have to do an extra step of entering your library card to get there, but when you do, you're going to get good information. So there's and there's also things that are just for hobbies or interest. We have Creative Bug, which gives videos and instructions on how to do little projects. We have Mango Languages if you're interested in learning how to speak a new language, recipes, magazine articles. It's almost limitless what you can find through our databases.
It's a great resource. I wanted to talk a little bit about, a lot of people are using apps more to interact with the library that way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We do have a library app, which will you can search the materials, the books, movies, and things that we have in the library. There's access to some reading lists, so if you don't know what your next great read should be, there's some lists there of suggestions. The coolest feature, I think, of our app that is underused is that you can actually check out your books with your phone. And I use it all of the time. And I always think, like, parents in the children's room with a bunch of little kids, you see them with a huge bag of books. Like, if they would just check out with the app, they could, take the book off the shelf, scan it, stick it in their bag, and they would be good to go. But like I said, I think that's a really cool feature that is underutilized.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. So I'm learning stuff too. So. Let's talk specifically about the pandemic and how that adjusted the library.
That was an experience. I started in the position of director in October of 2019. And
that's a rough way to begin.
The pandemic hit 5 months later. I'm really proud of the work that my team did in keeping services going while still keeping people safe. The library was only closed to the public completely for 2 months, from March until May. In May of that year, we opened up the Woodburn Library for curbside service. So we were able to bring materials out to the people that wanted them. And right prior to opening up for that curbside service, I have a video on my phone of the number of books that were on hold for people.
I'm sure it was overwhelming.
It was overwhelming. The whole shelf was completely full, and then we just had this train of book carts wrapped around the room. There was just such a pent-up demand for those materials. So we did curbside service for a while. We did some limited hours for a while. We were able to learn ways to provide service, with outside of the building. We had our children's librarians were doing virtual story times. We were doing other virtual programs, and the staff was just really creative and committed to doing whatever it was that we could. One of our managers went in. He was the only one in the building, and he used our 3D printer to print these mask extenders for the healthcare professionals that were, they're having a hard time because they weren't used to wearing masks as much as they were having to do, and like the backs of their ears were getting irritated. So he went in and printed out a bunch of those that we were able to donate to the hospitals nearby. I can't say that we are completely back to where we were pre-pandemic levels. It's been a little bit of a challenge to get people back in the habit of coming into the building, but every year we're seeing it tick back up, and I'm seeing more and more younger people coming into the library too, like those 20-somethings, and that's really great to see everybody coming back and enjoying the building in person.
Yeah, seeing the value of getting outside of your space, that mentally it's good for us to be in new areas, and especially, there's always something interesting to see or do in the library. I did a lot of those online things that you were talking about, trivia and classes and things like
escape rooms. We have virtual escape rooms that people all the way over in Europe were doing these finding our little escape rooms somehow. Right. We were just serving as widely as possible during that time.
Right.
Yeah.
You do a lot of programs for teens or children. Can you talk a little bit about the programs that you have for different age groups or different interests groups?
Yeah, we have programs from babies all the way to seniors. Our story times are very popular. We have some very good storytellers. And they incorporate into the story times finger plays and activities and suggestions for the parents or caregivers on ways to interact with their children, just throughout the day, and the importance of just talking to the kids and the exposure to the vocabulary and how important that is for development. Our we have a fairly new teen librarian who's bringing in some very creative ideas for programming for teens. This ties back to the exhibits. They're working on a exhibit with for teens, artwork that the teens have created called 6 Stories. So I think they're just currently working right now on trying to get the word out to the kids and getting them, creating so that they can have some submissions to turn in for that exhibit. Our Totally Teen Tuesdays programs,
those are super popular.
are hugely popular, particularly in the summer. The program room can just be packed with kids, and they'll do bingo and some video games, and it's just a
place to gather
and connect with other kids.
It's important.
Yeah, for sure.
Providing a place.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I know you have special interest groups as well. People, if you have a common interest, I know you have a lot of genealogy groups.
We have some very dedicated genealogists that will come in. I think they meet once a month before the library opens. So it's nice and quiet for them to do their research, and they have some librarians there on hand to help answer questions.
Support.
Yeah. We've had I think it's still happening. We have a knitting group that meets regularly, and that's really just group-led. I mean, there's a librarian there to help.
Providing the space for people to...
But, the knitters are just working with each other and offering tips and techniques to each other. We have a job networking group that meets once a month. For people who are looking for other employment. Book discussion groups. We have several of those that meet in the library. We have some that meet outside of the library.
I saw the one on Facebook that there's a...
that's afterwards. Yeah.
I love that idea of connect with people where they want to connect. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's always fun to talk about the thing that you're passionate about. So if you can find people that are similar, and it sounds like that's what libraries do.
Yeah.
They do it well.
Right. We're all about connection.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, why you came to this area and what Centerville and Washington Township, means to you and your family.
We landed in this area. My husband's family is in Sydney, Ohio, and so we were looking to be close to them, but not in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And so it was really just kind of by happenstance I found this job. My husband is a teacher at Miami Valley Career Technology Center. So he started teaching there in the same year that I started working at the library. And it's been a great place to live and to raise our kids. You had asked about the areas that were most meaningful to my family, and we lived in Kettering when we first got in this area. We moved to Washington Township when my kids were 7 and 9, and the biggest memories are really associated around our parks. And we live within walking distance of John Hull School, so my kids thought it was so fun to go in the little park next to John Hull and play in the creek. They thought that was really big stuff when they were, like 8, 9, and 10. Mm-hmm. Oak Grove Park, we spent so much time out at Oak Grove Park for soccer. Mm-hmm. Grant Nature, my son is currently at the University of Maine. And so when he comes home to visit, going hiking in Grant Nature, that's on his bucket list of...
If he's used to Maine, I'm sure.
things to do. Yeah. Oh, so, it's just a really nice place to live and raise kids.
I know it's hard to leave once you have these wonderful parks, and the libraries were so meaningful to my family. When they were growing up, going to the, those library story times, you'd have to get right on, to get into the library time that you wanted, and then the kids would have a huge stack of books that would bring home, and everyone would be reading at the same time.
I love those stories.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of our family life. And also not having to buy every book that you want to try out.
Right.
That I know I go to the library and kind of peruse the shelves, and especially if you're traveling, you want to look at the travel books and see if there's, any specific ideas on places you want to go to. So there's still so much that the library has.
And if you borrow it, there's no pressure to finish it. If you don't like the book, it's okay. Put it, put it down. You don't have to finish it. Yeah.
Especially if you're busy.
Right.
Or if you find one that you like better.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for being here today. Is there any final things that you'd like to talk about the library? I think we covered all of it. I think
we covered a lot of it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful that we have these libraries that we can enjoy and contribute to the education of our families and ourselves, to keep learning throughout your life and to keep having lots of interactions, and the library can provide that. One other thing that was on my mind is how can people rent those rooms? How can they reserve the meeting?
We do ask for you to have a library card to book it in advance. But the smaller rooms, the 4 to 6 people, you can call the library and schedule a time to do that. The bigger rooms, if you have a larger group, there's a form on our website that you can fill it in. Those can be reserved by nonprofits. Okay. So you can fill out that form, and somebody will be in touch to schedule the date and time.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, and I will go ahead and close by thanking MVCC for helping to produce this podcast, and also my guest, Liz Fultz. If you have an interesting story about Centerville or Washington Township, please contact Centerville-Washington History and visit our museums uptown Centerville, Tuesday through Friday, 12 o'clock to 4 p.m. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.